They called themselves masters of war. The Roman legions, unbreakable, unstoppable, feared from the deserts of Africa to the forests of Britain. But behind the sword and shield lies a question most never ask. Did the Romans ever use archers? At first glance, it seems they didn't. Their battles were fought face to face, shield against shield, courage measured by the blood on your hands. To them, the bow was dishonourable, a weapon for cowards, not soldiers. But that pride came at a cost. When Rome met enemies who ruled the skies with arrows, Parthian horsemen, Cretan mercenaries, Syrian bowmen, they were forced to adapt or die. And in that moment, the empire changed forever. From the deserts of Carrhae to the walls of Constantinople, archers became the empire's silent edge. Foreigners who fought for Rome, and legions who learned that victory could come not just from strength, but from distance. This is the forgotten story of the Roman bowmen, how they rose from the margins to reshape the empire's way of war. Because Rome's greatest weapon wasn't always the sword. Sometimes it was silence, flight, and the whisper of the arrow. Picture a Roman battlefield. The ground trembles with the rhythm of marching feet, shields locking in perfect unison. Spears and javelins glitter in the sun. For most of us, that is the image of Roman war. Tight ranks of legionaries pressing forward with sword and shield. Yet somewhere beyond that wall of iron, arrows arc through the air, whispering a truth often forgotten. Rome did not conquer the world by sword alone. From the dawn of the Republic to the fall of Constantinople, the bow served as one of Rome's quietest but most enduring weapons. In the early Republic, during the 5th to 2nd centuries BC, Rome's armies relied on citizen infantry, disciplined heavy troops trained for close combat. Their ranged fighters were the velites, young men who threw javelins before retreating behind the main line. Few Romans were skilled with the bow, and so archery played only a minor role. The early Romans, like their Greek neighbours, glorified hand-to-hand bravery. A man who killed face-to-face earned more honour than one who loosed missiles from afar. Yet even then, Rome learned from others. The island of Crete had long been famed for its archers, men who hunted in the mountains and fought with speed instead of armour. As Rome expanded into the Hellenistic world, it began hiring these Cretan bowmen as mercenaries and allies. When Hannibal invaded Italy in 218 BC, King Hero II of Syracuse sent 500 Cretan archers to support the Republic. They fought as light troops, barely armoured, small shields at their sides, able to run, shoot, and vanish. Roman writers quickly recognized their value. In 189 BC, during the campaign against the Galatians of Anatolia, Cretan archers and other missile troops devastated their foes. Livy describes the scene. The Galatians, fighting bare-chested, were struck by invisible volleys. Arrows pierced flesh, bright blood staining pale skin until panic swept their ranks. It was brutal, efficient, and unforgettable proof that arrows could break courage before swords ever touched. By the 1st century BC, archers had become an accepted part of Roman warfare, even if most were foreigners. Julius Caesar himself used them extensively. During his invasion of Britain in 55 BC, archers aboard his ships covered the beach landing, driving off warriors on the shore. At Alesia in 52 BC, they lined his fortifications, firing on Gauls trapped within and those trying to rescue them. Both Caesar and his rival Pompey employed entire contingents of archers in their civil wars. At Dyrrhachium in 48 BC, Pompey's arrows wounded many of Caesar's men and spread fear across the battlefield. By the end of the Republic, no Roman general marched without archers, but few of them were Roman citizens. They came from Crete, Numidia, Syria, and other provinces where the bow was tradition. When Augustus founded the empire in 27 BC and built a permanent standing army, he formalised this reality. Alongside the citizen legions, he organised the auxilia, non-citizen troops who brought specialised skills, cavalry, slingers, and archers. It was within these auxiliary ranks that the Sagittarii, literally arrowmen, became permanent. By the 1st century AD, nearly every Roman field army contained dedicated archer units. About 2/3 were on foot, 1/3 rode horseback. Their unit titles reflected their origins: Cohors Sagittariorum for foot archers, Ala Sagittariorum or Equites Sagittari for cavalry. Crete still supplied bowmen, but Syria soon dominated recruitment. Generations of Syrians had grown up with the composite bow, a layered weapon of wood, horn and sinew, capable of tremendous power. Thrace, Anatolia, and even North Africa contributed additional corps. One of the best known was the Cohors Hamiorum Sagittariorum, archers from Hama in Syria who served far away on the misty frontiers of Britain. On Hadrian's wall, a tombstone shows a Syrian archer cloaked against the cold, composite bow in hand. His carving stands as quiet evidence that Roman warfare stretched from desert heat to northern rain. Each cohort usually numbered about 500 men, though double-strength units reached 1,000. A cavalry ala of horse archers fielded roughly 500 riders. By the 2nd century AD, historians estimate that 1 in 12 auxiliary regiments was an archer unit, around 17,000 men across the empire. Over time, recruitment broadened. Italians and provincials alike could be trained with the bow, and after 25 years of service, an auxiliary archer earned citizenship for himself and his family. The promise of Roman status filled the ranks with loyal, skilled marksmen. But Rome also learned that not all archers fought the same way. There were two main types: the foot archer and the mounted archer, the Equites Sagittari. The Romans had faced the power of mounted archery long before. In 53 BC, Marcus Crassus led legions into Parthia and was annihilated at Carrhae. The Parthian cavalry surrounded his heavy infantry and rained arrows without end. The Romans could not catch them, could not retaliate, and were destroyed. The lesson was seared into Roman memory: never again face the East without archers of your own. Under Augustus and later emperors, Rome formed its own horse archer units, often recruiting from Syrian, Parthian and Sarmatian stock, peoples born to the saddle. Their weapon was the composite recurved bow, short, powerful and deadly from horseback. Equipped with helmets, light armour and small quivers at the hip, these riders could gallop forward, loose arrows in flight, and wheel away before an enemy could respond. Some mastered the Parthian shot, turning backward in full retreat to strike pursuers. Foot archers fought differently. They deployed in loose ranks behind or beside the legions, sending volleys that softened the enemy before the clash of swords. They could fire a dozen arrows a minute, aiming either directly or in high arcs that fell like rain. Many wore light mail or simple tunics. Protection mattered less than speed. On city walls they became defenders, cutting down attackers from above. Together, mounted and foot, these archers gave Rome true combined arms warfare. The infantry held the line, the cavalry flanked, and the archers filled the sky. The empire's archer corps became a mosaic of cultures. Cretans remained famous, but Syrians dominated the east. Thracians and Anatolians joined them, as did Numidians from North Africa. Later, archers came from Arabia, Armenia, even among the Gothic and Hun mercenaries who served for pay. Each brought their own style, sometimes wearing native helmets or trousers under Roman armour. On Trajan's column, carved around AD 113, you can see them. Eastern archers in long sleeves and pointed caps, their composite bows drawn amid the stone legions. Rome had turned diversity into doctrine. Their weapons were masterpieces of engineering. The composite bow's layered construction, wood core, horn belly, sinew back, gave immense power in a compact frame. Many were recurved and even asymmetrical, with a shorter lower limb for horseback use. Tests suggest they could shoot effectively to 200 metres and reach 400 at extreme range. Broadhead arrows tore through unarmoured flesh. Narrow bodkins pierced mail and scale. Iron arrowheads from Roman forts across Britain and the Near East still bear barbs meant to resist removal. Archers carried their arrows in leather or wooden quivers, feretræ, slung over shoulder or hip. They often wore a small dagger or long cavalry sword for emergencies. Some carried spears. Vegetius, a Roman military writer of the 4th century AD, recommended training recruits first with wooden bows before moving to full composite weapons. He believed all soldiers, even legionaries, should know the basics of missile fire. In battle, volleys of arrows created not just wounds, but fear. A line of archers could loose in unison, filling the air with a rising hiss before the impact. Against charging barbarians or oncoming cavalry, that sound alone could break momentum. Rome's history offers vivid examples. At Caesar's Alesia, archers on the ramparts shattered Gallic attacks. In Trajan's Dacian wars a century later, Cretan and Syrian archers helped subdue fortress after fortress across the Carpathian hills. Reliefs show them covering Roman advances and clearing defenders from walls. In the disastrous Battle of Carrhae, Roman lack of archers had spelled doom. In later wars, it was often the presence of archers that ensured victory. During the Jewish War of AD 66–70, archers suppressed defenders in Jerusalem's streets, while legionaries advanced behind their cover. In the 4th century, when Emperor Valens met the Goths at Adrianople, his archers struck first, yet they were too few. The Goths' cavalry outflanked them, and the Roman infantry was crushed. The defeat underscored again that missile troops were no longer optional. By the time of the Eastern campaigns against the Persians, archers had become essential. The culmination came in AD 552 at the Battle of Taginae, also called Busta Gallorum. The Byzantine general Narses faced the Ostrogothic king Totila in Italy. Narses placed masses of archers in the centre of his line, infantry and cavalry on the wings. When Totila's armoured riders charged, the imperial archers unleashed a storm of arrows that broke their momentum and felled Totila himself. Procopius, the historian, wrote that the victory belonged chiefly to the bowmen. As the centuries turned, the Western Empire collapsed, but the Eastern Empire, the Byzantines, carried Rome's military tradition into a new age. Facing Persians, Huns, and later Arabs, the Byzantines made archery a core strength rather than a supplement. The Notitia Dignitatum, compiled around AD 400, lists dozens of Sagittarii units, especially in the East and North Africa, proof of how central they had become. By the 6th century, under Emperor Maurice, the Byzantine army's striking arm was its cavalry, many trained as archers. Manuals, such as the Strategikon, describe mounted soldiers firing to the sides and even behind them while riding, a skill borrowed from steppe nomads. These hippotoxotai, or horse bowmen, were the heirs of centuries of adaptation. Infantry archers remained vital for fortress defence and sieges, now often equipped with composite bows or early crossbows. Under Emperor Heraclius in the 7th century, Byzantine archers fought fiercely against the Persians, matching them arrow for arrow. Later emperors maintained this focus. By the 10th century, even heavily armoured cataphracts carried bows to weaken enemies before a charge. Incendiary arrows tipped with Greek fire became part of the Byzantine arsenal, fiery streaks that terrified foes on land and sea. Through these transformations, one truth endured: the bow had become as Roman as the gladius once was. The story of Roman archery is ultimately one of adaptation. The Republic began with disdain for the bow, valuing the sword's courage. But experience reshaped that prejudice. Rome learned from allies and enemies alike, Cretans, Syrians, Parthians, Huns, and turned their expertise into imperial strength. Archaeology reveals arrowheads and fragments of composite bows from Britain to Dacia, testimony to how far this weapon travelled under the eagle standards. After the fall of the Western Empire, much of Europe forgot the art. Early medieval armies returned to swords and spears until the rise of the crossbow and longbow. Centuries later revived the principles Rome had mastered. Yet even then, generals read Vigesius, the late Roman writer, for guidance on discipline and missile tactics. The Byzantines, meanwhile, never lost the tradition. Their archery influenced the Arabs and Turks who followed, ensuring the bow's legacy survived far beyond Rome itself. In a haunting final echo when Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453, among the defenders on its walls stood a band of Cretan archers, descendants of the same island warriors who had once fought for Julius Caesar. 15 centuries separated them, but their arrows flew for the same cause, the defence of a Roman world. From the naked Galatians on the hills of Anatolia to the armoured cataphracts of Byzantium, the bow traced an unbroken line through Roman history. It was not the symbol of Rome's glory, but it was the instrument of her survival. The empire that conquered the world by steel learned that distance could be a weapon too. In the hands of its archers, Rome's reach extended farther than any sword could swing, across continents, centuries and civilizations. Even after the last legion vanished, the hiss of Roman arrows still carried through history, whispering of adaptation, mastery, and the quiet power that helped an empire endure for more than 1,000 years.